We are back for another edition of Average Sports. We're moving right along in Season 2. This is Episode 5. Glad to have you guys tune. 5 already? I know. And
dang.
Hey, man, it's March.
Man,
I don't know what that means other than winter's
too.
not quite done, but sports
Episode 5.
Yeah, hey.
We're here.
We're here. It's Eric and Ty with the Average... What's the show name? Average Sports.
I don't know.
Average Sports with your average guys.
By average guys. We do stuff a little different around here.
That's right. If it's your first time tuning in, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of how it works. We're just talking about sports, anything sports, whatever's on our mind. No set time, and if there's something you would like to hear us talk about, debate about, whatever, pick apart, send us your thoughts at averagesportsguys@gmail.com. Now, one thing we're not talking about
early, man.
I know. Hey, keeping you on your toes, Eric. One thing we're not talking about, though.
Show plugs we can get in this show for our own show.
All right. You're not even letting me start the show, by the way.
I don't know.
You're stepping on me. What are we not talking about, Eric?
Well, we're definitely not talking about our show plugs at averagesportsguys@gmail.com. That's 2. We're not talking about Antonio Brown and him throwing Ben Roethlisberger underneath the bus there in Pittsburgh. It was quite brutal if you guys saw that. But guess what we're not talking about? It's going to be that. So moving on to the next thing.
Well, there is another Steeler, though, that I caught the news of. Le'Veon Bell, although he's not a Steeler anymore. He's not going to stay in Pittsburgh. So real quick, Eric, is there a team out there that would be interested in picking a player like that up?
You know, I think there are. We did name a couple of teams pre-show that I feel like you and I were on the same page with some of them. As far as generalized cap space and a decent fit with the offense. And the two teams that I really narrowed down to would have been the New York Jets and the Indianapolis Colts. I think both of those teams have a spot for him. I think both those teams have a more established quarterback with Andrew Luck, but Sam Darnold is someone that definitely showed some flashes last year that I think could use someone like Le'Veon Bell too. So, and the Jets just have a track record of just throwing a bunch of money at people. So, yeah.
Yes or no?
Or Washington Redskins. I could see the Redskins signing him too because Dan Snyder just throws truckloads of money at people.
Well, you might as well just pick any team anywhere then, Eric.
Well, Dan Snyder in particular. What would he give Albert Haynesworth, like $1 billion? I think he's still on the books there in Washington. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yes or no, does he still have gas in the tank?
Yes.
All right. Cool. What did you see out there? There's some baseball signage.
I feel like, especially with what we weren't talking about last time, which was, our 4 big free agents still out there. The 2 biggest ones finally signed.
Yeah.
Manny Machado and Bryce Harper.
I think they listened to the show.
We put that episode. It must have been us because we put that episode out saying, hey, we weren't talking about this. And then instantaneous, within the next 2 weeks, they signed. So Major League Baseball fans, you're welcome. And Padre fans and Philly fans, you are also welcome. It was thanks to us that happened. So
sure, we'll take the credit.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and take the credit. That's what's happening. Screw you, Scott Boras.
And a little bit later, though, we'll talk about who we think is going to go to the World Series, make our picks for the World Series matchup ahead of the 2019 MLB season. But anyway, let's jump into our topic, which this originally started off as a conversation of maybe our who you got for the show. And it's talking about best sports markets in the U.S. Eric, break it down on what we're chatting about here.
Okay, so we need to put some parameters out there.
Yes, we do.
'Cause
we went at length at this.
We went at length over this pre-show when we were talking about this, which was starting out as you said, who you got. Now it turned into the topic because we had so much to talk about here, and we're not going to talk about the 4 biggest markets in the U.S. period based on just size of population, money in the market, popular teams. We're just throwing them out. So that's Los Angeles, New York, Boston, Chicago. And we are looking at an overhead view of American sports culture, including overall fan base, fan loyalty, brand name, the legacy that these teams have, and, recent bias as far as when I say recent bias, as far as like how good they've been recently, overall track record, going back to the 70s with football, going way back into the 20s with baseball, depending on how we're looking at it. But we're looking at it as an overhead view. And Ty, you had mentioned, alien comes down, lands in the middle of nowhere, USA, and wants to study our sports culture. And who do they find is the best sports culture based on, again, just very opinion based on who we got. But that's where we're at with this, some basic parameters for it. And so we're definitely going to want to hear your thoughts on this, guys. So please send them over to us on our Facebook page. Or, of course, you can shout us out on our email, avgsportsguys@gmail.com. That's 3.
That's 3. Okay. Yeah, that's not getting old at all, Eric.
No.
So starting from square zero, is there a square zero? Starting from the beginning of not knowing anything about sports and you wanting to learn as just a curious observer, wanting to know why do so many people get together on the weekend or anytime throughout the year in these mass crowds to watch our fellow humans, compete at an athletic level. What's such a drive for it, and what cities would exist out there that you would start? So let's say you're an anthropologist and you get a grant and you can only go to one city, and this is where you got to pick to start. So I like that. From there, let's get into it. As far as cities go, did you already mention some rule outs though?
So the rule outs are
we're going to knock those
out. The 4 biggest markets in the U.S., either by population, money size. So Los Angeles, New York, Boston, and Chicago.
Okay, because those are kind of obvious, right? It's easy to go to New York, Boston especially since they've won across all of their major sports within the last 15 years. Yeah, maybe even less than that.
I think even the last decade. Yeah,
sure. So you rule them out, and L.A. is a different one. I think that is a touchy one. L.A. is, yes, a big market, but I don't think it's a very good sports town. That's just me, though. I think there's so much else. There's so many other things going on in that city that sports isn't something that has to drive the city at all. It's not how you have to identify the city. It's just the sports are kind of like garnishing, like the celery of a Bloody Mary. Anyway.
You just threw the Lakers into the celery of Hollywood.
Well, maybe that just shows how much I care about the Lakers. But anyway.
Yeah.
You want to take this one? Who do you think? Best sports markets? Cities.
So, we didn't share our answers, as we typically don't on this show.
Yeah, it's more fun.
In our pre-show, we don't share our answers on what we think they are. I chose Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I chose Pittsburgh.
That sucks.
That sucks.
That sucks because I was going to say Pittsburgh. Absolutely. That's what I came in locked and loaded. Like, Pittsburgh is the city to go to. So now we have no conflict here, Eric. It is a good pick, though, I feel like. And I think we have some bias as well. We record St. Louis, and St. Louis, of course, is a good sports city.
It is. It's a great baseball town.
I grew up being a Cardinal fan, watching Blues. It's hard not to
it's a great
identify
St.
Louis as
I'll give that to you. I'm not from here. I live in St. Louis now. It has really captured me as far as a sports city, in particular in baseball. Wherever I've lived, I've never lived in a baseball city. It's always been second or third tier, and this is definitely a massive baseball city. But
between the Pirates, Steelers, and the Penguins, it's like those are some real teams that have been around a while, and I like that there's the color scheme. Even they didn't change per
all of them.
They really embrace every team that they have. Yeah,
Wiz Khalifa, man.
Sure.
He's all in
okay, so real quick then, we got to go let's rule them out. Where would you go?
Oh God! See, now I'm not prepared for that. So
no,
now I'm gonna have to kind of shoot from the cuff. But before we move on, I think it's important that we talk about why we chose them.
Okay,
don't you?
Sure, absolutely.
I chose them for the history of the team. You look at the Pittsburgh Pirates; they won 4 World Series in the '70s, and they were a very predominant team all the way into the '90s when they were very, very good, solid team there. Competing with the Braves quite a bit in the early '90s, and they've been okay recently, not great. Even a couple of years ago, they had a small stint of some playoff runs there. The Steelers, I mean, you talk about hardcore cornerstone NFL franchises. You talk about the Green Bay Packers. You talk about the Chicago Bears. You talk about the San Francisco 49ers, Dallas Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, those are your cornerstone long-term franchises of the NFL. And of course, you got the Pats nowadays and things like that. But I mean, your cornerstone markets. I mean, the Steelers are hardcore, one of them, and those fans are everywhere. They have the history, they have the championships, they have a great management, great ownership, and they are a premium franchise here in the States. And then you talk about the Penguins. I mean, let's talk about how good the Penguins were in the mid '90s, and Mario Lemieux was there. And then this franchise was about to be moved and picked up and derooted from Pittsburgh, and Mario Lemieux stepped in, saved them, and regrounded them in there. And I think this fan base is very blue collar. They fit that city. I think these teams represent that city very, very well. I think there's a few outstanding outliers, with individual players, but as a whole, I think these teams represent that market very, very well, who they are as a people and who they really choose to be is
absolutely. And just look at their stadiums alone between PNC Park and Heinz Field. These are some, cathedrals of sports, right? The mecca of, like, they've shot movies at these places, and it's places that you hear constantly in conversation on broadcasts. Like, yeah, you got to go to Pittsburgh. It's a great place to watch a game. I think there's a reason why you and I picked that city both.
Yeah, good.
It's a good demonstration of what
we don't normally agree on these things. So
no, we don't.
Cool.
Yeah. So, way to go.
Is a backup?
Pittsburgh, I guess.
Who do you got as a backup? Because I don't know what our time frame looks like.
Really trying to think of it, if I am the one trying to study sports across the country, I would consider Denver, just having been to a game at most of those teams. It's a very hot and cold city where there are some strong Broncos fans and some real fair weather fans when it comes to hockey and baseball. And then there's a good pocket of just strong basketball fans too. So it's very eclectic. So it's peculiar to watch. So you kind of get a taste of a little bit of everything from your diehard and where people set their priorities. And I mean, they spend as much money on like a vacation, or they spend their vacation time to go to a football game. That's true commitment. So I think maybe that city. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know. That would be my pick.
Yeah. Denver was definitely on my list of cities as well too. Dallas deserves a mention as well too. Just with as many sports teams as they have. Although that's not who I'm going to go with even for a second. I'm going San Francisco. I'm going San Francisco with the, again, we already mentioned a cornerstone of the NFL with the San Francisco 49ers and the legacy that they left behind. You have the San Francisco Giants, who were a great team, back in when they moved there from New York. And they also have, of course, been dominant recently with how good they've been with, in baseball, winning 3 titles in the last handful of years. Golden State Warriors haven't really traditionally been a great basketball team, but they've really energized the youth in that sport to want to be attracted to that team. And I think you've seen a huge surgence in San Francisco area, in the Bay Area towards the Golden State Warriors. And I think that's a great sports city, and not to be, outshadowed by some of the bigger markets. Now, San Francisco is not a small market, but, it's a great sports city. I think they have a lot of love for their teams there as well too, and it shows, especially with the Giants and the Niners. Yeah,
clearly, if your city has a little bit of history with its sports, then that's what is going to that's a clear indicator that you have the makings of it being a good sports city. If you don't have a franchise that hasn't been around at least 50 years, then you're just not there yet, because that takes a lot. It does, and just the turnover in staff alone, and ownership, there would probably be a change there, and that's usually what kind of disrupts then the lineage of a team, a franchise staying in one city. So you have to have an old historic team staying in a city for a long time. I think we can agree that that's what will make the potential for a great sports city. All right, well,
agreed.
It was fun to talk about. And rolling right into our next segment of the show, we are getting into that Who You Got for this episode, which is now for our World Series picks for 2019. Who do we think? The new season is right upon us. And 2 weeks? 3 weeks? 3 weeks.
it's coming up, man.
Just shy. So
it's going to be
at
here
the time
before
of
you know
recording
it.
this. That's right. So by our next episode, I mean, we are going